So this morning we're going to be talking about best practices for creating referrals. The question that we're asking is, once an assessment is complete, appropriate information needs to be transmitted to language training programs for placement. So we all do that in our assessment centres. What are the pieces of information that are needed by stakeholders to ensure best placement? How do we know when a successful placement has happened? So we're going to be exploring some of those questions this morning. I'm going to give you, as the audience, an opportunity to discuss a little bit at your tables as well, to come up with some answers and some questions for our panel. But first of all, I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves, please. Renata, can you start us off?
Technology. Can you hear me? Thank you. Yes, my name is Renata Ćosić, is how you pronounce my name, but that's okay. I'm the manager of Federal Programs and Funds Development at International Women of Saskatoon in Saskatoon. So we manage the language assessment and referral centers in Saskatoon, Regina, and also Prince Albert.
Great. Thank you, Renata.
I'm Angela Mowbray, and I'm the head teacher / assessor at Westman Immigrant Services in Brandon. We have a relatively small program, especially compared to big cities like Wellart or Winnipeg that has a program like Wellart, but we also still have to do all the referrals. So.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Biljana Tratnik, and I'm Assessment Services Manager with ILWARC in Calgary.
Good morning, I'm Carla Woods. I am a resource teacher with the Winnipeg School Division Adult English Language Program.
Good morning, my name is Stuart Schwartz. I'm Program Manager at Red River College Language Training Center, full-time programming supported by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. Thank you.
So you'll notice that two people at the end of the table, something doesn't belong here, right? Well, they do belong here, but we've asked two representatives of a couple of the language training programs in Winnipeg to join us because we thought it would be interesting to hear perspective from the schools as to what is useful for them and what is most valuable for them when they are getting the referrals to their language programs. So that's why we've asked Carla and Stuart to join us, and so we're looking forward to the unique perspective that they can provide to us as well. So the first question that I'm going to ask is just a really simple one, and that's what do you include on referrals? So I'm going to ask the panel and the first three people only to answer this question. You don't need to mention things obviously like name and address, those are basics, but anything that your program includes in particular on referral forms. Renata?
Okay, so with the referral, so following an assessment, a client goes into our referral room and they talk to a referral staff member. And the staff member will talk to the client about their needs in order to place them properly. So the information that we send out to the link service providers. First of all, on the assessment report, obviously, as you know, we have a comment section. So the assessors will fill that out with the comments. And we try to stick with the kind of the can-do checklist statements. So it's very professional and official. Any other information, if in the referral process, the staff determines, okay, this client has a unique situation and some of this information would be good to know. We're not going to include it in the comments on the assessment report, obviously. So the referral staff will send an email to the link service providers. And some of the information is, for example, if the client has a disability or some kind of cognitive impairment. So we don't want to put that on the assessment report. That will be sent in an email. Another thing that we send an email for is if a client is a refugee. As many of you may know, that's on the waitlist guidelines. If the client is a literacy student, we also send an email, and then we scan the literacy skills and strategies checklist from the LPT, and we send that to them as well because that's important for the teachers to know. Yeah, you're going to ask us the second question later,
yep.
Right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of the things that came up at one of our table conversations yesterday that some programs do and others don't is part of the data that's included on the top with personal information is years of education, the type of education that a client has, which some people in some programs said would actually be really useful to know because they don't necessarily have access to that information and can't necessarily find that out. And we also include the comments, as they do in Saskatchewan, of course, levels, and we try to do comments. We only really refer to ESL programs. So our comments, we try to make them so that they're usable by teachers and they make sense to them as to what the client can do at that level. Because even if someone's a level 4, it varies from student to student, as I'm sure you've all seen before. So
at ILWARC, after assessment is done, and then different options are discussed with the client based on assessment, of course, outcomes, client-specific situation, their needs. So then 2 options are recommended for a client, and this is also, of course, based on guidelines we got from IRCC. So we developed this referral form, also approved by IRCC, where we include, besides clients' personal information, we include benchmarks, also whether it is full-time or part-time program, whether they need, if it is part-time, based on their needs, of course, we include morning, evening, afternoon, and also then this referral form is taken by a client. So they have 2 options, equal opportunity options, and they have to choose where to go. So they take the referral form to those of 2 institutions. They pick which institutions they will go to, and then it continues, like the story continues, depending on whether there is wait list there or not.
Okay, thank you, Biljana. I'm going to give you, as groups now, about 2 to 3 minutes just to talk at your table. If there's anything that wasn't mentioned up here, maybe you can just share that with one another. If there's something unique that your LARC does or includes on referral forms, if you can just chat about that, I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to talk about it, and then we'll just quickly report back after that. So go ahead. Okay. If we can just get everybody's attention back up here. It's great to hear everybody so engaged. I didn't want to interrupt you too soon. So what I'm going to do is just ask if there's something that wasn't mentioned up here already that you feel is unique that was raised at your table. Could you please have somebody from your table stand up and mention it? And I think Sangeeta will pass a mic around so that we can all hear you. So feel free, whoever would like to go first. I know you're not shy. Okay, right here. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Okay, yeah, so kind of adding on to what Renata had said as well, in the referral we provide them with a referral package. So we'll give them their Understanding Your CLB, we'll give them a referral card, and on the referral card we'll select whether or not they have childcare needs. Sometimes we'll print off like bus information for them as well, so if they need to get a bus from their home to the classes or from the LARC as well.
Great, thank you. Should we move to this table maybe? Anybody from this table, anything else mentioned? No? No? Okay, anyone from this table at the front? No? How about the WellArc gang? Come on. I know there's something that's included on the WellArc referral that may be unique here. The UCI number? The PR number? Does anybody want to speak to that?
So one of the things that we include in our referral form at WellArc is the UCI number, as we're federally funded and all of the programs that we refer people to are link programs. That's something that we've been asked, that the programs have asked that we put on so that it's easier for them to identify the students and the clients to make sure that they're eligible for services. So always put the UCI number on there, or PR number, or unique identifier, or what's the other name for it? FOSS. FOSS. Thank you. I knew there was something else. But that's it.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
So, talking about refugees in particular, in terms of referral, we have a process in place at Elbark that all refugees who are actually residing in the reception house, we have a contact person there, and they are sending a list of all those newcomers to Elbark and book appointment for their assessments. So the protocol is that once we do the assessment and make the referrals, we will get back to them to let them know that the assessment has been done and a referral has been made. So this is a kind of protocol between us and the reception house. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Last chance? Right here?
Well, in smaller centers, you don't so much have the opportunity. In smaller centers, you may not have the opportunity or luxury of having an assessor as one individual and then a referral person as another individual. So the assessor is doing double duty. The assessor is providing the language school referral as well as doing the assessment. And certainly in our area, we're providing additional kinds of referrals to community kinds of organizations or groups that could enhance the individual's language learning, right? It's not just a language referral to a school. So all I'm saying is in smaller centers, that dual role is a single role.
Right. Thank you. And I think there was one other person over here.
So after referring our clients to the 13 linked schools in Edmonton and a number of ESL institutions, if we sense that a client needs a thorough educational counseling service, we usually advise them to book for a 45 minutes to a 1 hour counseling session with an EC counselor.
Okay, so I think that's something that is unique to a couple of centers, but not to everyone.
I don't know, is this working? Yeah. Working? Okay. Just to add that at Ilvark, we also, assessors are providing not only assessment, but referrals as well. So it goes as intake, assessment, and then referrals are issued by assessors. In case of clients, low-level clients, when they're like pre-benchmark till benchmark 3-4, we have first language counselor that will help with referrals as well. And their role is very important when clients really cannot speak any English. So they will talk to them and suggest options as well. We also have very similar as LARC educational counseling if needed for clients.
Okay, thank you, Biljana. If there are no further questions for the panel, does anyone have any other questions for the panel on this topic? I'm going to ask Carla to begin and then Stuart to answer as well. If you could speak a little bit about what would be helpful for you as programs, as language training programs, to see on a referral form that is not already being provided, or if there's nothing that that's there, if you can speak about what's most helpful.
Sure. I would say, and it is provided, it's just not always the same. You know, if the assessor changes, sometimes it's recorded a little bit differently. A sort of clear designation between literacy and regular stream. And Stuart and I were just talking about this. Sometimes it's not just years of education. There are other kind of, aspects that went into the decision-making of the assessor and referrer. And any of those details that can be provided are really helpful to us. We have the literacy placement test. We love to get a copy of it if it's been done by the student. We're fortunate, we have a very large program. We actually have a Foundation B class and a Foundation D class. We're really lucky, and we really like to use the literacy placement tool to help us decide between those two. We look at the comments of the assessor and where the check marks fall, how many cans, how many, those really are very helpful to us. And other information, we got this, started getting this in June, and we were really happy, is if they're doing a special program, like in Winnipeg we do the entry program, if you indicate the dates when they're done the entry program, if you know them, I mean you don't always know them, but if you do, that was really helpful, because last fall we called about 6 people and they came in and we're like, great, we got a class, and they said, yeah, but we haven't actually done entry yet. So we had to take them off the list, and then they had to wait a little bit to get back in at that point. Otherwise, I mean, it's filled with, what we get from WellArc is filled with a lot of really useful and helpful information, and we're really appreciative. And the more details, the better. It really does help. Thanks.
I was just going to quickly mention, Stuart, so in Winnipeg, the entry program is an information and orientation program that begins with language training as well. So clients in Winnipeg go to a centralized registration at what we call Manitoba Start. Then they go to the entry program to begin their language training and receive information and orientation. Depending on the level of the client, that may be anywhere from a week to 4 weeks. And once they're completed that, then they go to the Assessment and Referral Center for their language assessment. So that's what Carla was referring to there, the entry program. Oh, Deborah?
Yeah, just the checklist.
Okay, thank you, Deborah, for clarifying. Okay, Stuart.
I guess just to provide some context, I'm the program manager, and our program places approximately, 200 clients into programming. Typically we have, a few days to do that. And you can imagine the challenge that presents in terms of the amount of time that's available to interpret the information on a referral. So I guess one thing I'd say is that an effort to make the referral document itself as readable as possible would probably be of benefit. I guess I should preface my comments by saying I think the system works exceptionally well. I don't have a lot of, we can quibble about small details, but in general I think the process is working very well and our students are being accommodated. That said, if the referral document can be made more readable for the person who's doing the placement, and I'm not sure what that would look like exactly because there's a lot of information there, I think that might go some way towards making the placement process more efficient and facilitated. Another thing I might mention is that our current full-time programming offers streams for students. One stream is an employment stream and another stream is an academic stream. And I think information that can be elicited from the client in terms of their needs, their goals, would be very helpful. So if a client is interested in pursuing post-secondary education and that's indicated on the referral form, then that client can be placed more effectively than if that information is not there. And I think WellArc is doing a good job of communicating that information.
Does anybody did you have more to say on that, Stuart?
I have lots to say, but okay. I think I'll stop there for now.
Did anybody have any questions for Carla or Stuart? Or any comments about what you've heard? No? Okay. I'm going to give you another 2 to 3 minutes. What I'd like you to talk about at your tables is anything particular to your region or what you've heard from schools that you work with about what they find most useful on the referral form, or any feedback that they have provided to you about, it'd be really useful if we could see this, and if you don't have that kind of relationship with your schools, maybe just chat about if you think that would be useful. All right, so I'll give you the next 2 or 3 minutes to talk about that. Okay, we're going to get everyone's attention back up here. I guess when you put a whole room full of teachers together, this is bound to happen, right? We all have lots to say, which is great. So I'm going to ask now if we can just get some feedback from your table groups. So if anybody would like to speak about what you discussed. So the question was, do you have the kind of relationship with your language training programs that there is sort of a back and forth about, hey, here's what we would find helpful? If so, what are some of those things that you include on your referral form? If you don't have that relationship, is that something that you think would be useful for you? So would anybody like to speak to that? Or were you just talking about the museum tour last night? And okay, up at the front here.
Hi. Okay. We're with the Language Assessment and Referral Center, Saskatchewan.
Okay.
So the situation in Saskatchewan is quite different because as much as we love the idea of conducting the intro program where we do the information and orientation for the clients, having to do everything, and we do that referral whether for employment purposes or academic. We couldn't possibly do that because we have partner agencies we work with who are responsible for information and orientation for the clients, like the Open Door Societies, whether it's in Saskatoon or in Regina. So our focus as a center is to conduct the language tests and do the referrals to the link XPOs because we need to respect the boundaries set by RCC for funding purposes without overstepping because the partnerships we enjoy or the supports we enjoy with the SPOs on our LAC advisory committee is very critical because by us trying to do their job, we might affect that relationship and we wouldn't have the support for LAC. Right. So we stay within the limits of our boundaries. Yes. So it's very critical for us, in as much as we want to do everything, because it works in the best interest of the clients to be able to do all that. They know to come to a centralized place and get the support and then go off into the community. But we couldn't possibly do that because Saskatchewan is peculiar.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? There's a comment at the back, I think. Is that Beulah?
Hello. At our table, most of us work in rural centers, so we do not have language assessment referral centers that we work with. So it's a very different story in rural centers. Often learners are coming to our program, getting registered, and then they're getting an assessment because our classes are multi-level, yes? So it doesn't matter so critically about the placement, so we do the assessments as quickly as possible. Only that when there are our college campuses near larger centers, like in Warman, I'm going to give you a Saskatchewan example that relates to our college. Like Warman is very close to Saskatoon. So in that case, we could have learners bring in their assessment report to our program. But we do not have any relationship with LARC in Saskatoon directly that they will tell us that we are sending a learner who lives in Warman and we've done an assessment. So we don't have that, but the learners bring the assessment. But the rural story is very different. No referral centers. Often learners are getting assessment after they're in the program, and they're multiple level classes, so they don't matter. Would anybody else like to add anything? And we do provide whatever information whenever we do assessment is on that report form. So that will have the client ID number, the phone number, all the details that is expected, and the comments. And sometimes our assessors, we are meaning to do it in our college, Great Plains College, more seriously, is that we have that multilingual report that you can get up at CLB levels. That way it says, if you're at this level, this is what you can do in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So we give it to the learner. And their multi-language report, those are available at CLB level, so we give it to the learner, explain the learner, this is what you can do.
Okay.
Sometimes we do that.
All right, thank you.
You want to add?
So it sounds like there is quite a few regional differences between urban and rural centers, differences that are just from province to province as to what people are including on referral forms or how that information is being shared. It sounds like even when the assessment is being done, there's quite a variety around that. Anybody else wanted to speak to this topic, or any questions for our panelists? In particular, Stuart or Carla, about what is useful for schools on those referral forms? Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to share something that we did in Halifax. We formed a special needs committee between our center and the LINK programs, as well as some labor market programs and other service providers in the community. And this committee has done a number of initiatives, including staff training, awareness building, as well as, for example, they had a mental health workshop for staff. But one area that they have been, so ISANS, which is the main settlement provider and language program, LINK program in Halifax, has an ASL for EAL program, as well as EAL program for those with intellectual disabilities. And so part of our work as the committee was to agree upon a way to communicate the special needs of clients. So that, on the referral side, involves maybe sometimes no one necessarily has a diagnosis per se, and those are very expensive and difficult to get for adults. But what we've agreed upon is to talk to the client about what many of you probably do already, which is just say, okay, is there anything that the teacher should know that would help you in the classroom? And for some families and individuals, they may not have even identified this formally, but they may have many strategies for dealing with it in their own family. So we talk to them about those strategies, and as a community, the LINK schools and the assessment center, where instead of labeling those special needs that we have no jurisdiction to label, we are more focused on strategies. So no matter what the challenges facing the client are, or what they're called, how can this learner maybe better be supported in the LINK program?
Great, that's really helpful, Erin. Thank you. Can I ask maybe the panelists to speak about, just briefly, about what you do when these kinds of special needs or learning disabilities are identified at the assessment center, and how you share that information with the schools? Biljana, do you want to start us off? Since the mic's right in front of you.
Well, at Tilburg, we established separate procedure for clients with special needs in terms of assessment. So clients first come, we have one assessor who is coordinating this. So clients first come for intake and needs assessment, where our coordinator goes into details determining what kind of special needs they're in question. So we developed needs as a list of actually a form where we when we do needs assessment. So based on all the information collected from the client or accompanying a family member, or sometimes even documentation that's provided, we then first book an appointment, and also we ask clients for their feedback, depending on their special needs, what would help them, what kind of accommodation we can provide to help them to actually do the test to the best of their abilities. So then we book an appointment for them, and of course we cannot modify or change the content of the test. It's a standardized test, but we try to use some assistive technology, as you know, it's very expensive, but we try to use whatever we have to help them, a larger font or whatever will help them. So we actually the feedback we got from our clients is really good. They are really happy to have this special kind of treatment. Because in the past we try to help a little bit, give them a bigger, larger font, and that's it. Sometimes we didn't even assess, let's say, one area, listening and speaking or reading and writing, but now we are trying more, and then after the assessment there are comments that are included together with their report, assessment report, that are sent to teachers. Of course, we don't have expertise. We cannot diagnose them, but we are trying to accommodate more their needs and to send this more details to teachers, to SPO, so they can actually have more knowledge about the background of these clients.
Okay, thank you, Biljana. Angela, maybe as someone from a smaller center, if you could speak to that question as well, because I know those resources are not necessarily available in smaller centers.
In Brandon, we're quite lucky in that all our settlement services are also in the same building. And before people come for an assessment, they've done an intake with a settlement facilitator, often in first language or with a language assistant or an interpreter. And all the information they've gathered is available to us as well. So we can see that information because a lot of our clients are stage 1 learners. So the ability to even have that discussion with them to try to figure out the issue is really difficult for us. And most of our assessors, well, all of them except for me, are just casual, which was mentioned in rural centers. Assessors are doing a lot of different things usually.
Right.
And we're lucky in that we only refer to like 3 places. So often what happens is within the assessment, it's usually, you can usually tell there's something going on, but maybe you don't know what it is. Sometimes you think there may be a speech impairment, but you don't really know, or it could be an intellectual disability again, but you don't really know. Often what I do is send an email to teachers or I'll leave them a note in their mailbox and say, come and talk to me about this client. And we kind of go over it again about what are their issues. But we really haven't done a lot of referrals to outside agencies or worked a lot with them. It's been really difficult to identify what people's abilities or disabilities may be in a smaller center. And we don't really have anybody dedicated to doing that. Or even when I listen to Albert talk, and lots of people talk about the education counselor, even to have somebody who could help with that would be a really great thing for any program. I think it's something I'll have to think about more. I think it would be very helpful for our clients. So
great, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a gap that was identified definitely on the surveys that we received back from you as participants, was something that was really identified as there just aren't enough supports, tools, resources to help LARC's assessment referral centers to identify these needs, and what do you do once they're identified? Go ahead, Renata.
So we're a medium-sized center, I would say, and we see approximately 3 to 5 people with special needs or disabilities per month, I would say. The special need or disability could either be identified by the intake staff right at the beginning during registration, or sometimes it's not one of those things that's easily seen, so then the assessor picks up on some of these things during the assessment. And again, like Erin was saying, it's not always a diagnosed thing. So if an assessor notices, okay, there's something going on that might impede with this client's language learning, the first thing that we do is, I tell the assessor to talk to the referral staff. I get involved usually as well, and we call the link service providers to see if they can accommodate this client, first of all, because sometimes they do not have the supports in the classroom to be able to take this client into their class. So usually, sometimes they're accommodating, sometimes the clients, we had one of the Syrian refugees who was blind, and he just wanted to, and he was a senior client as well, he just wanted to sit in a class with his wife and just kind of absorb the information, and he wasn't really interested in furthering his education or doing anything. Like he just wanted to feel, like a part of society. So, so one of the links posts said, yeah, that's okay, we can accommodate the client, and they really enjoyed having him in the class. So, if anything else comes up, usually what we do as well is we try to refer the client to our sister agency. The gentleman was mentioning the Open Door Society for an official needs assessment with their NARS staff. So usually we'll give that referral as well and call the SPO and tell them, can you accommodate this client? So hopefully one of those things happens. In terms of accommodation, we don't have any specific tools in place. We don't have large size font or anything like that, but we kind of work with CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind. They've referred a few clients to us, and they've brought their own magnifier. I don't know what it is. It's like a tablet, and that the client used this in the assessment. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Renata. Oh, Liliana has something else to
add.
say?
Yeah, we also have partnerships with local Calgary organizations that help clients with disability, and just wanted to let you know if you would like to hear more details. Our Judith will have presentation today, so about the process for clients and the procedures for clients with special needs at Tilbark.
Could I ask Carla and Stuart to speak to what is most helpful for schools when there are clients with special needs?
Right, so if we're given a heads up, we're fortunate at Red River College to have an accessibility services department, so we leverage their expertise in linking with community organizations that can support a client who is learning how to use assistive technologies, and then we can accommodate that client in the upcoming term.
Okay.
In the Winnipeg School Division Adult English Language Program, we're fortunate to be so closely allied with the Winnipeg School Division because we are able to make use of their personnel and we get a heads up from WellArc that someone's coming who has a certain special need, and we are either able to find someone within our own organization to assist them, whether it's an EA or someone who knows Braille or that kind of thing, or we can work on making community connections and community referrals to places like CNIB. But we're quite unique, and a lot of smaller programs aren't connected with a school division, so they don't get to make use of those support systems as we're able to. So we're quite lucky in that way that we've been able to deal with many special needs in our classes. So.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of things. It sounds like what I've heard here is that, again, varies widely between rural and urban centers. And I wonder if there's anybody here from a smaller center that would like to speak or has a comment about if you have a very small center where you don't have these kinds of resources, what are the challenges that you experience, or how do you handle those situations when they come? Anyone? Yes?
We don't have, it's small, we don't have a literacy component
Okay.
program.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, and the classes are multi-level, so the lowest level class is level 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to take literacy or anybody with learning disabilities into that group, and there's like 14 in the class. So what we have to do, I work with the integration officer, and we have to find a tutor. So we train tutors. There's a long, whoever wants to do that kind of work comes to the integration center, and they'll train certain people to be volunteers with these type of people.
Okay.
So that's their only recourse. They can work as a volunteer until they, get to the level where I can see them again and see if I think they can fit into the class, because you can disrupt a whole class of 14 people with one student who is very needy.
Right.
So that's how we handle it. We count on volunteers to do some tutoring with them.
Right. Okay. So you've developed kind of a volunteer program to address that need.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trained by the integration sector.
Okay. Great. And where are you from? Sorry?
Yellowknife.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this? You don't have to be from a small center if you just have another comment or anything to do with students with special needs and referral forms. It sounds also like the whole aspect of giving the schools a heads up, although that's not a very official sort of process, it sounds like all of you are doing that in a variety of ways, and that's very key, because I'm sure we all know, many of you are teachers as well, and so just having a student show up in your program without that advanced notice is very challenging. So I think you're all working with your assessment referral centers to do that. I want to move on to the last question that we're going to talk about, which is about a successful referral and how we define a successful referral. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about this for 2 or 3 minutes again. So from your perspective, how would you define a successful referral? Okay, if we can get some reporting back going, and then we can hear from as many tables as would like to share with us. So we haven't heard from as many people at the back of the room over there. Maybe we can start back there. Is there anybody who has some comments about what would you identify as a successful referral? What would define a successful referral to you? Is there anybody at some of the back tables there that would like to speak to that? Great, thank you.
So I'm speaking for myself and not anyone else at the table. But
okay, that's fair.
So in my mind, a successful referral is it's appropriate to the client's needs. It accounts for their benchmark level, and we are referring them to an institution that doesn't have a long wait list. To me, if we are making a referral and we have an idea that that person may be sitting on a wait list for 6 months, that is not a successful referral. So there needs to be better communication between the assessment centers and the service providers about wait lists and about getting these students into classes so they can actually start learning.
Thank you. Anybody else from back in that area of the room there? The table that's right next to the window, did you have anything that you would like to share? Yes? Great, thank you.
So I'm also in a very rural area, so our referrals are kind of backwards where students register in class first. And so I would say success would be if a student stays in class after that and succeeds and goes up a CLB level in one of the skills. We don't have other referrals that we do because there's not services available around there, such with support from CNIB and different organizations like that. So that would be our main success, would be to see the students succeed in class.
Great, okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this question? Anything that hasn't been mentioned that you would like to mention? Doreen up here, I think, would like to speak to that.
Hi, we kind of measure success in our ESL program by student retention.
Okay.
And I think if you watch attendance stats in classes, that you'll see whether or not some students are finding the class useful or not, because they'll keep coming. It really comes down to, are they getting what they need? Because most of them vote with their feet if they're not.
Right. Good point. Over here, I think. Yep.
For us, successful referral would also mean when they leave, not yelling at you.
At the assessment center or at the school?
The center, the students, the client.
Okay.
And by this, I mean, we've had experiences where a couple might come into the center and the woman may choose to perform poorly because her husband, she will not dare score higher than him. And in the referral room, we might sense some domestic violence happening, and him needing to have her sit next to him in class, or go at the same time to class, or not even ride on the bus to the class because he needs to be with her at all times. So even though we insist on making sure that the particular client's needs, say the woman's needs, are catered to, and say, okay, this is your level, and this is your level. For us, we know at the back of our minds that she might end up not going to class because he will eventually dictate where she goes. So in our minds, we figured, is it really successful for her in light of her peculiar circumstances? And you never know.
Yeah. Sounds like there's some sort of nodding going on around the room. How is this handled in your center? Because it sounds like this is a situation that does come up. Is there somebody that's doing something in particular? Aaron, did you want to speak to that?
I often just give my card to both people
Mm-hmm.
in the room, and there's lots of different situations, but I often just make sure that they know how to contact me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people take me up on it and contact me separately at some point.
Mm.
And we have there's a counselor at ISANS, which is our sister, and we will pass on that information if it's requested. But I make sure that my information is given to everybody
Mm-hmm.
who comes in for the language counseling.
Does anybody contact the school, for example, where that referral is being made, and is that appropriate? Yes.
Take them. I had a couple like that. The man refused to be separated from his wife and left her next to him in class. And they were different levels. He was lower level than she was.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to put them together in the same class, and that's the way it was. And she had to let him take the lead. That's her role in her culture. And he'd be feeding her the answers. She'd accept the answers, and it was just as clear to anybody that she's not getting anywhere with this. But that's just the way it is. I tried to, at the end of that year, move her up a level, but they didn't come. They didn't come back. So it's difficult.
Yeah. Deborah? Oh. Deborah has a comment about that.
I think it is important for us to transmit to the schools any particular concerns there are about a client's special needs. So, I mean, if that's needs like this person's in a wheelchair and needs to be able to get access to a classroom, that's one thing. But it may be that a separate email needs to go to say, this person is really nervous about being in class and may need a little extra TLC at the very beginning. Or this person has an abusive partner. Please make sure that there's no information given anywhere around that we need to protect this person as much as possible. And I think those are really, really important things, not only for us to transmit to the school, but for us to make sure the client knows we're transmitting to the school, so that we can say to them, we want to help you to be in class, to learn enough English, to be independent, and we want to make sure that you're safe doing that, and that we can offer you some supports and protections along the way. So in whatever way we can do that, whether it's a phone call, I have phoned Carlo or Stuart on occasion and said, I got kind of a special situation here. And then they take it from there. And it means that the client knows that we trust they're speaking to us and that we're holding them as, important people.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment on that sort of particular situation and that was very tricky? Yes?
I actually...
It's on.
Okay. I actually had a comment that wasn't necessarily in that situation in particular, although we try to do the same things and have come across that where the wives have not wanted to move forward in a different class, not necessarily because the husband was abusive, but just because the husband would then look not as smart or as capable. And at the beginning, we accommodated that and, had both husband and wife in a class, and it was an easier transition the second year. Luckily for us, they did come back, and we just said, okay, you're going to go over here and you're going to go over here, and tried not to make a big deal about it. But it is a really tricky thing in that you don't want there to be issues at home later for the wife, And just because we think you should be in a higher level, if that's not the best thing for you once you leave, that's not the best thing for you. So, it kind of goes into what we think is successful isn't necessarily what the student thinks is successful for assessment and referral. I just want to share one story that Darlene, who's our executive assistant, who often is giving them their class card where they need to go. So the assessors will be very diligent and explain, you know, everything to them, and these are the comments that we made, and this is why, and you need to work on this. And then the assessor walks away and they turn to Darlene and say, what level am I? So I think success is really them understanding where they're being placed, what their overall level is, and all the other things like, oh, if you work on your pronunciation, it'll be helpful, or your grammar. In class, the teachers will help them with that, and we do now, especially with PBLA for teachers, they have a lot of opportunities to discuss strengths and weaknesses with students and help students recognize their own. So in the assessment piece, that might be useful information for teachers, but I think sometimes for students, they either don't understand or don't care. They really just want to know their number at the end. So.
Right. Carla, did you want to comment on the previous topic?
Yeah, I wanted to just say that I know in our school, we often don't know who's married. Okay. And sometimes we try not to put husbands and wives in the same room. Right. But sometimes you find 6 weeks in, these guys are actually married to each other. Right. So I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know if there's a way to indicate that or not. But I think in the circumstance where you suspect there is an issue, then I think there's always an effort made to try and indicate that on the referral sheet.
Right. Okay. Maybe I'll just give the panel as well an opportunity to speak to the question about what is a successful referral. So, yeah, Renata, did you want to?
I have 5 points.
Okay. She's well prepared.
Okay, so first of all, we need to ensure that the benchmarks are accurate and that the overall placement is accurate. At the LARC, we have 2 assessors working at the same time, and they double check each other's work. So this is kind of especially the case when a client has a spiky profile, for example, if they're a 5.543. So are we going to place that client in a level 5 or a level 4? So the 2 assessors will talk to each other and determine, okay, they should really go into level 4 because of their writing. Second point is that the client's needs are met. So are they going to a class where it's accessible to them? If they're taking 2 buses, you know, is that really the best place for them? Sometimes it's the only option, unfortunately. You know, is it a mother with 3 children? Is there childminding available? You know, that's a successful referral if there's childminding on site for her. Somebody already mentioned retention, and if the client stays in the program for an extended period of time, moving up to the next level, you know, we want them to move up at least to a level 4, but they should really move up higher than a 4 so that they can get jobs that pay them a living wage. And also ensuring that their other needs are met, whether it's for employment or even mental health supports, and that referrals are made to proper organizations for that. And then, of course, my last point is receiving the feedback from the link service providing organization. So for us, no feedback is good feedback. At the beginning, I received more feedback, and it's great because we use that to improve our systems and procedures. And the link service providing organizations always know that they can contact us in case there's an issue. So usually if we don't hear from them, then we feel like that's a success.
Thank you. Yes.
Renata, in cases where clients have a so-called spiky profile, did I understand you correctly that assessors determine the level that the client is intended to be placed at? Or is it the case that there's a separate CLB level for each skill and you rely on the providers to make a determination as to the placement?
Tricky question.
No, we determine the overall placement. So on the assessment report, we'll write down benchmarks, so listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and then the overall placement. So this We talk to these service providers. I know this is not the case in every province, but for us, this is really helpful for the service providers because there might be, somebody with a 5.543, the client will be like, well, I want to go to a CLB6 class. We're like, well, you really should be in a CLB4 class because of your writing. You need to improve your writing. So yeah, we do make that determination. And if they end up in a link class and for some reason the teacher determines after 1 or 2 months that you can be in a CLB5 or maybe they should be in a CLB3, I don't know, they can move that client into a different class.
I think that brings up an interesting point. I don't know if we have time to discuss it today, but who does the placement? Is that the role of the Assessment and Referral Center? Is that the role of the school? I know in Winnipeg it's quite clearly defined as the role of the school and that WellArc is not a placement organization, but I think that's done differently in different centers, and so that may be something that you want to chat about when you're networking today. It's an interesting topic. Biljana, did you have anything to add to the conversation about what is a successful referral?
Well, I agree with everything that has been said so far, and that the referral should be appropriate to client needs, to their benchmarks, and also with something I agree with that Anita mentioned, no wait lists. And in the ideal world, that would be the case when we give a referral, the perfect referral to a client, and then they go to school and they start their classes, let's say, next week. Unfortunately, that's not the case, so at least not in Calgary. But we have really good relations with our SPOs, with link providers. So now they are sending us weekly updates about their wait list. So at least we can avoid referring clients to programs with 6 months or 1 year long wait lists. So yeah, wait list is an important part.
Great.
Of the success. Yeah.
Thank you, Biljana. Either Stuart or Carla, just 30 seconds to wrap up. Anything else we haven't mentioned about what do you consider successful
Just
in
in terms
referral?
of success, you could look at it from a short-term and long-term perspective. In terms of the long-term, basically echoing what people have already said, no complaints from instructors. Student has a reasonable rate of progress. Student completes the term. Student attends regularly. Student is not saying that the class is too easy or too hard. Student is not moved to a different class level within the first month. Those kind of metrics. And in terms of short-term placement, that we can contact the client, that the contact information is accurate. I think that's, although very basic, super important and not always achievable.
Right. All right. We've run out of time, and I do want to ask Shiraz to come up. He has an announcement to make, and so I'm going to give him a couple of minutes to do that. I want to thank you all very much for your participation, and thank our panelists very much for their willingness to be up here.